Victoria Chen hadn't walked in 3 years. She sat in her wheelchair every single day, staring out at the New York City skyline from the 42nd floor. The view was beautiful, sure, but she'd seen it so many times that it meant nothing anymore. Just glass and steel and clouds that never changed. She was 26 years old and her life had ended when she was 23. Well, that's what it felt like anyway. Her father would hate hearing her say that. Richard Chen was one of the richest men in America, the CEO of a massive company that did business all over the world. He'd spent millions trying to fix her, doctors from every country you could think of, Switzerland, Japan, Germany. They all said the same thing in different ways. The damage to her spine was too severe. She'd never walk again. The accident had happened on a perfect autumn day. Victoria had been riding her horse at their country estate, jumping over obstacles like she'd done 1,000 times before. But that day something went wrong. The horse spooked, she fell wrong, and in one terrible moment everything changed. The doctors said she was lucky to be alive. Victoria didn't feel lucky. Her father had brought her back to the penthouse after months in the hospital. He'd hired nurses, physical therapists, and counselors. He'd converted rooms and installed equipment. He'd done everything a father could do. But Victoria had given up. She'd stopped trying after the first year. What was the point? The servants walked quietly around her. They brought her meals, helped her when she needed it, and said very little. She heard them whispering sometimes. They called her the Ice Princess, cold and distant. She didn't blame them. That's exactly what she'd become. It was a Thursday morning in October when everything started to change. Victoria was in her usual spot by the window when she heard voices in the hallway. Her father was talking to his business partner, James Morrison. They'd known each other for 30 years, since before her father built his empire. "Richard, I know this sounds crazy," James was saying, "but hear me out." Victoria turned her wheelchair slightly. She wasn't supposed to eavesdrop, but there wasn't much else to do. "I've heard every crazy idea in the world, James. If you're about to suggest another experimental treatment, save your breath. We've tried everything. This isn't some experimental treatment. It's a man. A farmer, actually. Lives upstate on a property we're looking to acquire. The locals talk about him like he's some kind of miracle worker." Her father laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "A farmer? Are you serious?" "I know how it sounds. But Richard, I met him. There's something about him. He's helped people with all kinds of problems. Bad backs, chronic pain, people who'd been in accidents. He uses old techniques. Things passed down in his family for generations. Natural remedies, traditional methods. I know it sounds like nonsense, but it is nonsense," her father interrupted. "I'm not bringing some country farmer to work on my daughter. We have real doctors, specialists, and they've all failed," James said quietly. "I'm not saying this man can work miracles. I'm just saying, what do you have to lose? He doesn't even ask for money. He just wants to help people." Victoria felt something twist in her chest. It wasn't hope exactly. Hope had died a long time ago. But it was something. A tiny flicker of curiosity. Let him try. Her own voice surprised her. She hadn't meant to speak. The words just came out. Both men turned to stare at her. Her father's eyes went wide. Victoria hardly spoke anymore. Days would go by where she'd only say a handful of words. "Victoria," her father started, but she cut him off. "You said you've tried everything. So what's one more thing? What difference does it make?" Her father looked torn. She could see him struggling with it. He wanted to protect her from more disappointment. But she was right, and he knew it. "Okay," he finally said. "Okay, James, set it up." 1 week later, Daniel Hayes walked into the Chen penthouse. Victoria heard the elevator doors open and watched as her father's assistant led him in. She'd been expecting someone old, maybe with a long beard and strange clothes, someone who looked like he belonged in a fantasy movie. Daniel Hayes looked normal. He was probably in his early 30s, tall and lean with the kind of build you get from actual work, not from a gym. He wore regular jeans and a simple button-down shirt. His hands looked rough, like he used them for real labor. His face was kind, with lines around his eyes that came from smiling in the sun. The staff looked at him like he was dirt on their expensive floors. Her father stood with his arms crossed, clearly skeptical. But Daniel didn't seem bothered by any of it. He walked right over to Victoria and did something nobody had done in a long time. He knelt down so they were at eye level. He looked at her like she was a real person, not a broken thing to be pitied. "Miss Chen," he said, and his voice was steady and calm. "My name is Daniel. I want to be honest with you from the start. I don't know if I can help you walk again. I won't make promises I can't keep. But I do believe something. Your body hasn't forgotten how to heal. Sometimes it just needs a reminder. Sometimes it needs someone who believes it can." Victoria stared at him. She'd heard so many speeches from so many doctors. They'd all been full of medical terms and careful explanations about why things wouldn't work. This man was different. He talked like they were just two people having a conversation. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "If you don't want money, what's in it for you?" Daniel smiled a little. "My grandmother raised me after my parents died. She taught me everything she knew about helping people heal. Before she passed, she made me promise something. She said everyone deserves a chance to get back what they lost. Not everyone will succeed, but everyone deserves the chance to try. That's all I'm offering you. A chance." Over the next few days, Daniel came to the penthouse every morning. He brought strange things with him. Herbs and plants from his farm. Oils that smelled like earth and forests. He didn't use fancy equipment or computers. He just used his hands and his knowledge. The first few sessions were awkward. He'd work on her legs, manipulating the muscles in ways that felt different from what the physical therapists had done. It didn't hurt, but it didn't feel like much of anything. Victoria stayed quiet, expecting this to fail like everything else. But Daniel talked. He told her stories about his farm, about his stubborn horse that wouldn't let anyone ride her, about his grandmother who could predict rain by the way the leaves turned, about the old dog he'd rescued that only had 3 legs but still tried to herd the chickens. Victoria found herself listening. Then, slowly, she found herself talking back. Small things at first, comments about his stories, questions about the farm. It had been so long since she'd had a real conversation with someone who wasn't paid to be there. By the end of the first week, something happened that Victoria had almost forgotten was possible. She laughed. Actually laughed at one of Daniel's stories about a raccoon that kept stealing vegetables from his garden. Her father heard it from the other room. She saw him stop in the doorway, his eyes getting wet. She realized then that he hadn't heard her laugh in 3 years. That night, lying in bed, Victoria felt something she'd thought was dead inside her. It was small and fragile, and she was afraid to name it. But it was there, growing in the darkness. It was hope. Daniel showed up every morning at 9 o'clock sharp. Victoria found herself waiting for him, which was strange because she hadn't looked forward to anything in years. She'd wheel herself to the living room early, pretending she just happened to be there when he arrived. He never treated her sessions like medical appointments. That's what Victoria liked most about him. The physical therapist her father hired always came in with clipboards and schedules and goals. They'd move her legs like she was a machine that needed fixing. Daniel was different. He'd sit down, ask her how she slept, and actually listen to the answer. "Your body tells a story," he said one morning, his hands working on her left leg. "And right now your body is telling me it's tired. Not just physically tired. Tired of fighting." Victoria looked away. "Wouldn't you be?" "Yeah," Daniel said simply. "I would be. Anyone would be. But here's the thing I learned from my grandmother. The body and the mind, they're connected in ways doctors don't always understand. When your mind gives up, your body follows. When your body hurts, your mind suffers. You can't heal one without the other." He made it sound so simple. Victoria wanted to believe him, but 3 years of disappointment had built thick walls around her heart. During the second week, Daniel started using these warm compresses. He'd heat up cloth bags filled with herbs and place them on her legs. The smell was strong, kind of like pine trees and something sweet she couldn't identify. It made the whole penthouse smell like a forest. The staff hated it. Victoria heard the head housekeeper complaining to her father. "Mr. Chen, the apartment smells like a barn. This is highly irregular. That man is not a licensed professional." Her father had defended Daniel, though Victoria could tell he was still unsure. He'd watched the sessions from a distance, his face unreadable. She knew he was torn between wanting to believe and being afraid to hope. On the 10th day, something impossible happened. Daniel was working on her legs like usual, talking about something funny his neighbor had done. Victoria wasn't really listening. She was looking out the window, half lost in her own thoughts. Then she felt it. A tingling sensation in her left foot. Not imagined. Not a memory. Real, actual feeling. Her breath caught in her throat. "Wait," Daniel stopped immediately. "What is it?" "My foot. I felt something in my foot." The room went completely silent. Victoria stared down at her legs, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. The tingling came again, stronger this time, then pain. Sharp, real, undeniable pain shot through her left foot. Tears started streaming down her face before she could stop them. "It hurts," she whispered. "Daniel, it hurts. Most people would think that's a bad thing." But Daniel broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. "That's good, Victoria. That's really good. Pain means your nerves are waking up. Your body is remembering." Her father came running from his office. "What happened?" "What's wrong?" "Dad, I felt something. I felt pain in my foot." Richard Chen looked at his daughter, then at Daniel, then back at his daughter. His hand went to his mouth. For a moment, Victoria thought he might cry. Instead, he grabbed his phone. "I'm calling the medical team. We need to document this." The next few days were chaos. Doctors came in and out, running tests and scans. They poked and prodded and asked a million questions. The results confused everyone. The imaging showed no change to Victoria's spinal injury. According to every test, nothing should be different. But Victoria could feel her left foot now. Not all the time and not completely, but she could feel it. One neurologist actually told her father it was impossible. "Mr. Chen, I don't doubt your daughter is experiencing sensations, but medically speaking, there's no explanation for it. The damage to her spine hasn't changed." "Then explain what's happening," her father demanded. The doctor had no answer, but Daniel did. "The body knows things science hasn't figured out yet," he said calmly. "I'm not saying science is wrong. I'm saying it doesn't have all the answers. Your daughter's body wants to heal. We're just helping it remember the way." Victoria's father pulled Daniel aside that afternoon. Victoria couldn't hear what they said, but she saw money change hands. Daniel tried to refuse, but her father insisted. It was clear her father was starting to believe. As the sensation in Victoria's foot grew stronger, Daniel suggested something that shocked everyone. "She needs to leave the penthouse," he said during a family meeting. Her father, his assistant, the head of security, and the medical coordinator were all there. "Absolutely not," the security chief said immediately. "Miss Chen requires specialized care and equipment. Miss Chen requires hope," Daniel said firmly. "She's been living in this place for 3 years. Beautiful as it is, it's still a prison. She needs to see the world again. She needs to remember what she's fighting for." Victoria felt her heart race. Leave the penthouse? She hadn't left in over a year. The thought terrified her, but it also excited her in a way she couldn't explain. "Where would she go?" her father asked carefully. "My farm. It's quiet, peaceful, fresh air, open space. I can work with her there more intensively. And honestly, Mr. Chen, I think the change of environment will help her heal faster." The room erupted in objections. Too risky. Not secure enough. What if something goes wrong? But Victoria heard herself speak up. "I want to go." Everyone stopped talking. "Victoria, sweetheart," her father started, but she shook her head. "Dad, I've been stuck in this apartment for 3 years. I've been stuck in my own head even longer. Maybe Daniel's right. Maybe I need something different." She looked at Daniel. "When can we start?" Her father struggled with the decision for 2 days. He had his security team inspect Daniel's farm. He had his lawyers draw up liability waivers. He had his medical team create emergency protocols. But in the end, he agreed. The drive upstate took 2 hours. Victoria sat in the back of her father's car, watching the city disappear behind them. Trees replaced buildings. Open fields replaced concrete. The sky seemed bigger somehow. When they pulled up to Daniel's farm, Victoria's breath caught. It was small and simple. An old white farmhouse with a red barn. Chickens wandered around the yard. A dog came running up, tail wagging like crazy. "That's Scout," Daniel said, helping Victoria into her wheelchair. "He's friendly, but he's got no manners." The dog put his head on Victoria's lap immediately. Without thinking, she reached down and petted him. When was the last time she'd touched an animal? Inside the farmhouse, everything was worn but clean. Wooden floors that creaked. Furniture that looked like it had been there for decades. Pictures on the walls of people Victoria assumed were Daniel's family. It smelled like coffee and something baking. An older woman came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "You must be Victoria. I'm Mrs. Patterson from next door. Daniel asked me to make some lunch for you folks." It was the most normal thing anyone had said to Victoria in 3 years. Not Miss Chen, not formal and distant. Just Victoria. That first day at the farm, Daniel worked with her for 3 hours. Different exercises, different techniques. Her left foot responded more and more. By the end of the session, she could wiggle her toes slightly. As the sun started to set, Daniel wheeled her out to the porch. They sat in silence, watching the sky turn orange and pink. Scout lay at her feet. Somewhere in the distance, a bird was singing. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not my injury, not my father's money. Just me." Daniel smiled. "That's the easiest part, Victoria. You're pretty hard to miss." Something warm spread through Victoria's chest. It took her a moment to recognize what it was. For the first time in 3 years, she felt alive. Victoria started spending 3 days a week at the farm. Her father wasn't thrilled about it, but he couldn't argue with the results. In just 2 weeks, she'd regained feeling in both feet. The doctors were baffled. Her father was cautiously hopeful. Victoria was just happy. The farm became her sanctuary. No marble floors or designer furniture. No servants tiptoeing around her. Just honest simplicity. Mrs. Patterson would bring over fresh bread and homemade soup. Scout followed Victoria everywhere, like he'd appointed himself her personal guardian. And Daniel worked with her every day, patient and encouraging. "Try to push against my hand," Daniel said one morning. His palm pressed against the bottom of her right foot. Victoria concentrated hard. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, she felt her foot move. Just a little, but it moved. "I did it." She couldn't keep the excitement out of her voice. "You sure did. Now let's try the left one." The work was exhausting. Some days, Victoria could barely stay awake during the drive back to the city. But it was good exhaustion. The kind that came from actually doing something, not from just sitting around feeling sorry for herself. During the 3rd week, something shifted between her and Daniel. They'd been talking about his grandmother when Victoria asked about his parents. "They died in a car accident when I was 8, Daniel said simply. He was preparing one of his herbal mixtures, his hands working automatically. "My grandmother took me in, raised me on this farm, taught me everything she knew." "That must have been hard," Victoria said softly. "It was, but my grandmother, she had this way of looking at life. She'd say, 'Daniel, you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond to it.' Took me years to understand what she meant." Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. "I've spent 3 years responding by giving up." Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her. "But you're not giving up now. That's what matters." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary. Victoria felt her heart do a strange flutter. She told herself it was just gratitude. That's all it was. Gratitude. But she knew she was lying to herself. The following week, a photographer from some tabloid magazine somehow got pictures of Victoria at the farm. She was sitting on the porch with Daniel, laughing at something he'd said. Scout was in her lap. She looked happy. Really genuinely happy. The photos hit the internet the next day. The headlines were everywhere. Millionaire CEO's daughter spotted with mystery man. Victoria Chen's secret farm visits. Ice princess melts for farm boy. Victoria's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her father called 6 times before she finally answered. "Victoria, we need to talk about this," he said, his voice tight with stress. "The board is concerned. They're saying Daniel might be taking advantage of you, of the situation." "That's ridiculous," Victoria shot back. "Daniel hasn't asked for anything, which almost makes it more suspicious. People don't help billionaires' daughters out of the goodness of their hearts. Maybe you've spent too long in the business world. Dad, maybe you've forgotten that good people actually exist." Her father was quiet for a moment. "I just don't want to see you get hurt. I'm already hurt. I've been hurt for 3 years. Daniel is helping me heal. Why can't you see that?" But her father wasn't the only one with concerns. The board of directors at Chen Global Industries started digging into Daniel's background. They hired private investigators. They looked for debts, criminal records, anything they could use to prove he had ulterior motives. They found nothing. Daniel Hayes was exactly who he appeared to be, a farmer who lived simply, paid his bills on time, and had never been in trouble with the law. That almost made it worse in their eyes. Everyone had an angle, they thought. What was his... Victoria didn't know about the investigation at first. She was too focused on her progress. By the end of the month, she could feel both legs completely. The sensation was strange at first, like her legs belonged to someone else. But gradually, they started feeling like hers again. Daniel introduced a new phase of therapy. With leg braces and his support, Victoria would try to stand. The first attempt was terrifying. Her legs shook so badly she thought they'd give out immediately. Daniel held her steady, his hands firm on her waist. "I've got you," he said. "I won't let you fall." She stood for 5 seconds before her legs gave out. Daniel caught her, easing her back into the wheelchair. Victoria wanted to cry from frustration. "Hey," Daniel said, tilting her chin up so she had to look at him. "You just stood up. Do you understand how incredible that is? 5 seconds today. Tomorrow, maybe 10. We'll get there." Every day she stood for a little longer. Every day her legs got a little stronger. And every day she fell a little more for the man who refused to give up on her. One evening in late November, after a particularly grueling session, Victoria and Daniel sat on the porch watching the sunset. The air was cold and Daniel had draped a blanket over her shoulders. Scott was asleep at their feet. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said quietly. "Anything. Why do you really do this? Help people, I mean. There has to be more to it than a promise to your grandmother." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "When my parents died, I was angry. Really angry. At God, at the universe, at everyone. I was this angry little kid who didn't understand why bad things happened. My grandmother could have sent me to therapy, put me on medication, tried to fix me the conventional way. But instead she taught me to work with my hands, to grow things, to help injured animals, to understand that healing isn't just about medicine." He paused, looking out at the darkening sky. One day she told me something I never forgot. She said, "Daniel, suffering either makes you bitter or it makes you better. The choice is yours." She taught me that the best way to heal my own pain was to help ease someone else's. Victoria felt tears building in her eyes. "Your grandmother sounds like she was an amazing person." She was. "And you know what? She'd have really liked you. Even though I'm a spoiled rich girl who gave up for 3 years? Daniel turned to look at her, his expression serious. "You're not spoiled, Victoria. You're strong, maybe the strongest person I've ever met. You just forgot it for a while, but you're remembering now." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither of them was quite ready to name. Victoria's heart was pounding. Daniel was close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Daniel," she whispered. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Victoria didn't want to pull away. She'd never wanted anything less. When his lips touched hers, it was gentle and sweet and perfect. It lasted only a few seconds, but it changed everything. When they pulled apart, Daniel looked worried. "I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. You're my patient, and I shouldn't have—" "Stop," Victoria said, smiling. "Don't apologize for the best thing that's happened to me in 3 years." They sat there in comfortable silence as the stars started coming out. Victoria knew this would complicate things. She knew her father would have opinions. She knew the world would have opinions. But right then, sitting on that porch with Daniel's hand in hers, none of that mattered. For the first time since her accident, Victoria wasn't just surviving. She was living, and she was falling in love. The surveillance photos landed on Richard Chen's desk on a Tuesday morning. Black and white images of his daughter and Daniel on the porch, their faces close together, clearly kissing. His assistant had left them there without a word, knowing what they meant. Richard stared at the photos for a long time. Part of him had seen this coming. Part of him had hoped he was wrong. He picked up his phone and made a call he'd been dreading. "Get me everything on Daniel Hayes, everything. I want to know if he's ever so much as returned a library book late." Meanwhile, Victoria was having the best week of her life. She'd managed to stand for 3 full minutes without her legs giving out. 3 minutes didn't sound like much, but to her, it was a miracle. And Daniel had been there for every second, his hands ready to catch her if she fell. They hadn't talked about the kiss. Not directly anyway. But things had changed between them. Small touches that lasted longer than necessary. Looks that said more than words. Victoria found herself thinking about him constantly. When she was back at the penthouse, she counted the hours until she could see him again. Her father noticed. Of course he did. He started asking questions about the therapy sessions, about Daniel's methods, about how much time they spent together. Victoria kept her answers vague, but she could see the worry in his eyes. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something," her father said one evening over dinner. "Are you developing feelings for Daniel?" Victoria set down her fork. She could lie. Part of her wanted to. But she was tired of hiding. Yes, I am. Her father's face fell. Victoria, you have to understand how this looks. He's helping you, yes, but he could be using me. Is that what you think? Victoria felt anger rising in her chest. Dad, Daniel has never asked for anything. He barely even accepted payment from you. He's genuine. People can seem genuine when they want something badly enough. Or maybe, just maybe, he actually cares about me. Not my money, not my last name. Just me. That conversation happened on Wednesday. By Friday, everything exploded. Richard Chen drove up to the farm unannounced. Daniel was outside working on a fence when the expensive black car pulled up. He knew immediately that this wasn't a friendly visit. Richard got out of the car, his face hard. Mr. Hayes, we need to talk. Of course, Mr. Chen, let me just, how much do you want? Daniel stopped. Excuse me? To walk away from my daughter. Name your price. I'm a reasonable man. I understand you've helped Victoria, and I'm grateful for that. But this thing between you two, it needs to stop. So name your price. Daniel felt anger burn in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. Mr. Chen, I'm not going to walk away from Victoria, and I'm definitely not going to accept money to do it. Everyone has a price, Mr. Hayes. Well, I guess I'm not everyone. Richard stepped closer, his voice dropping. You think you know my daughter? You've known her for what, 2 months? I've known her for 26 years. She's vulnerable right now. She's confusing gratitude with something else. Once she's better, once she's back in her real world, she'll realize this was just a fantasy. With all due respect, sir, maybe you should let Victoria decide what's real and what's fantasy. She's not thinking clearly. She's thinking more clearly than she has in 3 years. Before Richard could respond, they heard wheels on gravel. Victoria came around the side of the house in her wheelchair, her face flushed with anger. Dad, what are you doing here? Richard turned to his daughter. Victoria, we need to go home now. This is about Daniel, isn't it? About us? There is no us, sweetheart. He's your therapist. That's all. Victoria wheeled herself forward until she was between the two men. He's more than that, and you know it. Daniel has given me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope, life, and yes, love. If you can't see that, then maybe you don't know me as well as you think. Victoria, please. No, Dad. For 3 years you tried to fix me with money and doctors and expensive treatments. You never once asked what I actually needed. Daniel did, he saw me. Not the CEO's daughter, not the girl in the wheelchair, just me. And I'm not going to let you take that away. Richard looked at his daughter, then at Daniel, then back at his daughter. His jaw was tight. Fine. But when this falls apart, when you realize what a mistake you've made, don't say I didn't warn you. He got back in his car and drove away, leaving dust in his wake. Victoria's hands were shaking. Daniel knelt beside her wheelchair. Hey, you okay? I just told my father off. I've never done that before. He's just worried about you. He loves you. I know. But I love you too. The words hung in the air between them. Victoria hadn't meant to say it like that, just blurted out. But there it was. The truth. Daniel's eyes went wide. Victoria, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Daniel took her hands in his. I was trying to figure out the right time to tell you. Some romantic moment. But I guess this works too. I love you, Victoria. I've probably loved you since the day you laughed for the first time in my grandmother's kitchen. They kissed again. Longer this time, pouring everything they felt into it. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. But the happiness didn't last long. 2 days later, Victoria pushed herself too hard during therapy. She'd been standing with the leg braces trying to take a step. Daniel had warned her to take it slow, but she was frustrated. She wanted to walk. She wanted to prove to her father that she was getting better, that Daniel wasn't a distraction but the reason for her progress. She put weight on her right leg and tried to move forward. Her leg buckled. Daniel reached for her, but he wasn't fast enough. Victoria fell hard, crying out in pain. The ambulance came within 20 minutes. They rushed her to the hospital in the city. Daniel tried to go with her, but the paramedic said only family. He followed in his truck, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. At the hospital, doctors ran tests, X-rays, MRIs. Victoria had fractured her wrist in the fall and severely strained the muscles in her legs. Worse, the doctor said she'd pushed her body too far. The nerves that had been healing were now inflamed. She needed complete rest. Richard was there within an hour. He didn't say I told you so, but he didn't have to. It was written all over his face. Daniel showed up an hour after that. Security stopped him at the entrance to Victoria's floor. "I'm sorry, sir. Family only, Mr. Chen's orders. I need to see her, please. I can't let you through." Daniel stood there, helpless. Somewhere above him, Victoria was hurting and he couldn't get to her. He pulled out his phone and texted her. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have stopped you." He waited for a response. None came. What Daniel didn't know was that Victoria's phone was in her purse, and her purse was in the corner of the room. She was lying in the hospital bed, tears running down her face, wondering if her father had been right. Wondering if she'd been foolish to hope. Wondering if love was worth the pain of falling. Outside, Daniel sat in the waiting room until visiting hours ended. Then he drove back to his farm alone, the empty passenger seat reminding him of everything he stood to lose. Victoria spent 2 weeks in the hospital. 2 weeks that felt like 2 years. The doctors ran every test imaginable, and what they found shocked everyone. Against every medical explanation, her spinal cord was showing signs of healing. Actual nerve regeneration that shouldn't have been possible. The head neurologist stood by her bed looking at the scans with confusion. "Miss Chen, I've been practicing medicine for 30 years. I've never seen anything like this. Your injury was severe. Permanent, we thought. But somehow your nerves are rebuilding pathways. It's slow and it's delicate, but it's happening. So I can still get better?" Victoria asked, her voice small. "If you're careful, if you don't push too hard. Your body is attempting something extraordinary, but it's fragile. One wrong move and you could undo all the progress." Victoria nodded, but inside her heart was breaking. She hadn't seen Daniel since the accident. Her father had made sure of that. Every time she asked about him, her father changed the subject. Her phone had mysteriously disappeared. She felt trapped all over again. Richard sat by her bedside every evening. He brought her favorite foods. He told her about work. He did everything a loving father would do. But there was one thing he wouldn't do. He wouldn't let her see Daniel. "Dad, please," Victoria said on the 10th day. "I just want to talk to him." "Sweetheart, you need to focus on healing, not on some romance that nearly put you back in a wheelchair permanently. That wasn't Daniel's fault. That was mine. I pushed too hard, because you were trying to impress him. Don't you see? This relationship is clouding your judgment." Victoria looked at her father, really looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, the exhaustion, the desperation of a man who'd almost lost his daughter and was terrified of losing her again. "Dad," she said softly, "sit down. We need to really talk." Richard sat, looking wary. "I know you're scared. I know you've spent 3 years trying to protect me, trying to fix me. And I love you for that. But you can't protect me from everything. You can't protect me from life. I can try. At what cost? You've built this bubble around me, and yes, it's kept me safe. But it's also kept me from living. Daniel didn't break me, Dad. He helped me put myself back together, and I know the fall was scary. It scared me too. But I'd rather fall 1,000 times trying to walk than spend the rest of my life sitting still because I'm afraid." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "I can't lose you, Victoria. You're all I have. You're not going to lose me. But you have to let me make my own choices, even if they're not the choices you'd make, even if they scare you." Her father was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out her phone. "He's called 43 times. Texted even more. I had your assistant block him because I thought I was protecting you." Victoria took the phone with shaking hands. "Thank you." That night after her father left, Victoria called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. "Victoria? Oh my God, are you okay? I've been trying to reach you for 2 weeks. They wouldn't tell me anything at the hospital and I—" "Daniel, breathe," Victoria said, smiling through her tears. "I'm okay. Well, mostly okay. I fractured my wrist and messed up my legs pretty badly, but the doctors say I can still heal. I just have to be more careful. I'm so sorry. I should have stopped you that day. I knew you were pushing too hard. Stop, this wasn't your fault. It was mine. I was trying to prove something and I got reckless. But Daniel, the doctors found something. My spinal cord is healing. Actually healing. They say it's impossible, but it's happening." She could hear him crying on the other end of the line. "That's amazing. I don't even have words, and I want to see you. Can you come to the hospital tomorrow?" "I'll be there first thing in the morning." The next day, Richard personally went to the security desk and added Daniel's name to the approved visitors list. When Daniel walked into Victoria's room, carrying wildflowers from his farm, she burst into tears. He rushed to her bedside, setting the flowers down and taking her hand. "Hey, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. You're here." They sat together for hours talking about everything and nothing. Daniel told her about the farm, about Scout who kept looking for her, about Mrs. Patterson who sent her love. Victoria told him about the doctor's findings, about her conversation with her father, about how much she'd missed him. "I love you," Daniel said suddenly. "I need you to know that. Whatever happens, whatever comes next, I love you. I love you too. And Daniel, we're going to get through this together." 3 months passed. 3 months of careful, monitored therapy. Daniel worked with Victoria's medical team now, combining his traditional methods with modern medicine. It was slow. Some days felt like no progress at all. But Victoria didn't give up. Her father surprised everyone by becoming Daniel's biggest supporter. He'd spent time talking to Daniel, learning about his methods, understanding the man his daughter loved. Richard even visited the farm, walking the property with Daniel, asking questions about the herbs and techniques. "You really love her," Richard said one afternoon. "It wasn't a question. More than anything, sir. And you understand what you're getting into? The media attention, the public scrutiny, the pressure of being with someone from her world?" Daniel smiled. "Mr. Chen, I'm a farmer. I wake up at 5 in the morning to feed chickens. I spend my days with my hands in dirt. I'm never going to fit into your world, and I'm okay with that. The question is, are you okay with Victoria fitting into mine?" Richard considered this. "I think Victoria needs both worlds, and I think you're exactly the person to help her balance them." On a cold February morning, everything came together. Victoria stood in the hospital's physical therapy room, wearing leg braces and holding on to parallel bars. Her entire medical team was watching. Daniel stood at the end of the bars, 10 feet away, his hand stretched out toward her. "You ready?" he asked. Victoria took a deep breath. "I'm ready." She lifted her right foot and moved it forward. 1 step, her leg shook, but it held. She moved her left foot. 2 steps. The room was completely silent except for her breathing. 3 steps, 4. Her muscles screamed in protest. 5 steps. Daniel was right there now, just a few feet away. "Come on, Victoria. You can do this." 6 steps, 7. She was crying, but she didn't stop. 8 steps. She reached Daniel and fell into his arms. But this time she didn't fall because her legs gave out. She fell because she'd made it. She'd walked. The room erupted in applause. Doctors were crying. Her father, watching from the doorway, had to sit down, but Victoria only heard Daniel's voice in her ear. "I knew you could do it. I always knew." 18 months later, Victoria walked down the aisle of a small church near Daniel's farm. No wheelchair. No assistance. Just her, in a simple white dress carrying wildflowers, walking toward the man who'd taught her that healing wasn't just about medicine. It was about belief. Her father gave her away with tears in his eyes and love in his heart. He'd learned something important over the past 2 years. Sometimes the best way to protect the people you love is to let them take risks, to let them fall, to let them fly. Victoria and Daniel built a life that straddled both worlds. They split their time between the farm and the city. Victoria started a foundation that combined traditional healing methods with modern medicine, helping people with spinal injuries who'd been told there was no hope. She never forgot where she came from. The 3 years in the wheelchair, the depression, the hopelessness, but she also never forgot what pulled her out of it. Love, belief, and a poor farmer who'd whispered, "Let me try." Some people called it a miracle. The doctors called it unexplained, but Victoria knew the truth. Healing doesn't come from money or medicine alone. It comes from the courage to hope when everything seems hopeless. It comes from people who believe in you when you've stopped believing in yourself. And sometimes it comes from a simple farmer who knows that the best things in life can't be bought. They can only be grown, nurtured, and given freely from one heart to another. On quiet evenings, Victoria and Daniel still sat on that old farmhouse porch, watching the sunset. Scout, now gray around the muzzle, still lay at their feet, and Victoria would look at her husband and think about how far she'd come, from a girl who couldn't move to a woman who couldn't stop moving forward, from someone who'd given up on life to someone who embraced every single day, from a prisoner in a golden cage to a person who was finally truly free.